for the Chancellor's report.
Thank you very much. I might comment upon the absence of two members. Manuel Baca told me last week, he called and said he wouldn't be getting here till the afternoon because he will be attending the funeral of Hilda Solis's father. Hilda Solis, as you know, is head of the Department of Labor in Washington, is a good friend of community colleges. In fact, she was a former community college trustee at Rio Hondo College, where Manuel Baca teaches, and he's a very close friend of hers. And also Benita Haley, whose term is expiring. Probably many of you heard that her husband passed away after a very long illness. So I'll just simply make comment upon the absence of those two members at this time. I'll add a little bit to the fact that Scott Himmelstein talked about our visit to Washington. It was, I thought, a very profitable visit, and I want to thank Vice Chancellor Garcia and her faithful helper who arranged all those visits. It was really, we got to go into a lot of congressional offices, Senator Boxer, Senator Feinstein, McCarthy, Kevin McCarthy, Congressman Buck McEwen. We saw in person both Adam Schiff and George Miller. As you know, George Miller is the ranking member of the Education Committee and one of the more powerful Congress members in Washington. We got to visit with the Chronicle of Higher Ed and Inside Higher Education. And we visited with the Department of Education. We met with Martha Cantor and others from the Department of Education. You'll recall that Martha Cantor is a former chancellor of the De Anza Foothill District and was a chancellor there, and then became the Undersecretary of Education in the Obama administration, the highest post in the Department of Education that any community college person has ever had. Frankly, the whole idea of student success and student completion is very high on the agenda in Washington. It's true of whether you talk to members of the Obama administration. In fact, we learned that the Obama administration is going to require of every university and college a scorecard. Well, that's interesting because, as you know, the Student Success Task Force has recommended that all the community colleges have a common scorecard. Martha had read our Student Success Task Force, and in her own words, she said it was fantastic and was very enthusiastic about what was happening here in California. We also went into the Department of Labor. We met with the Department of Labor Secretary, Hilda Solis, and some others. We talked about veterans and a whole host of other matters. So we did think it was a profitable visit. I've made quite a number of campus visits between now and our last meeting. On January 25th, I was up at Yuba College for a Chancellor's Circle. I went to the opening of the Elk Grove Center, part of the Los Rios District, on February 9th. Visited East Los Angeles College on February 27th, a part of the Chancellor's Circle. Spoke at a National Public Radio panel down in Pasadena on January 11th, and also because I am a UC Governance Fellow to the students who are coming here to study the working in politics at the UC Center. And so I lectured to those students for about an hour in February and in March. It's a really interesting kind of exchange. And then last week, on March 1st, I was able to go to West Hills College, and Paul Feast and I spent the day there. And the reason we did that was that West Hills College is kind of a model for something we've talked about in terms of student success. One of the things that the Student Success Task Force recommends is that all entering students go through a orientation and an assessment and also state their educational plan. Well, West Hills College got ahead of us. They decided to do that in the fall of this year. They went to all their feeder high schools, 15 feeder high schools. They invited them to come to the campus. They gave them an orientation if they signed up to come to West Hills College. They in turn assessed them, and they sat down with them and helped them work through an educational plan. The results is that the college going rate of those 15 feeder high schools was 35% higher in the fall of 2011 than it was in the fall of 2010.
Very good.
It made a real difference in the lives of those students, and we had heard about this, and so Paul and I went there just to say, how'd you do it? And they filled us in on the details. It wasn't easy to do. They worked together as the two colleges there, Lemoore and Coalinga, and they worked on that, and they gave these first-year students priority registration. But they also required of them that they go through, if they get this priority registration, that they go through a orientation and go through an assessment and discuss their educational plan. So we made a video of that, and we may share that at a later date. We continue to work on the Student Success Task Force. We'll hear from the Little Hoover Commission that made their recommendations on community colleges, and I would have to say that much of it parallels the kind of recommendations that are made by the Student Success Task Force. We've gotten some excellent editorial support from the Sacramento Bee, the Modesto Bee, and the Santa Cruz Sentinel that have just come out lately. Quite a few other have come out, and the statewide Chamber of Commerce has also endorsed our plan, as well as the legislative analysts. So that's a little bit of my report. I'll be glad to go into greater detail when questions are asked later in the meeting, but I just wanted to update you on what was happening both in the state of California and in Washington, D.C.